AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of a seating chart dispute. I, 29F, have a younger sister, Emily, 27F, who has always been a little dramatic, but I've generally tried to maintain a good relationship with her. Growing up, we had the usual sibling rivalry, arguing over clothes, borrowing each other's stuff, and competing for attention, but we were close enough that I thought we'd be in each other's lives for the long haul. Lately, though, things have gotten tense, and I can't tell if I'm overreacting or if she's crossed a line. I need a neutral perspective. Emily got engaged about a year ago. She and her fiancé, Mark, 28M, have been together for 6 years, and by all accounts, they're a solid couple. When she told me the wedding was happening, I was genuinely happy and immediately offered to help with planning in any way I could. I even suggested helping with DIY decorations, sending out invites, and assisting with the seating chart. I figured it was my chance to contribute without stepping on toes. I didn't expect that helping would lead to one of the biggest arguments of my life. Here's where it starts getting complicated. Emily decided very early on that the seating chart would be non-negotiable. She and Mark sat down with their wedding planner and essentially assigned seats based on friendships, family relationships, and a few personal preferences. I was fine with that at first, trusting that she knew best. But when she handed me a draft of the seating arrangement, I noticed something odd. My mother, father, and I were all at the same table, which made sense. But my husband, Tom, 32M, who I had been married to for 5 years, was assigned to a table with a friend from college I had never met, and she had made a note on the chart to make it work. At first, I laughed it off, thinking it was just a temporary placement. When I asked Emily if she could seat Tom at our family table, she got really defensive. She said, "We want people to mingle, and Tom doesn't know anyone here, so it's better this way." I tried to explain that it wasn't just about knowing people, but that Tom and I have always been together at family events, and splitting us up felt exclusionary. Emily responded, "It's one dinner. You'll survive. Don't be dramatic." That hurt because she dismissed my feelings outright, and I could tell from her tone that this wasn't up for discussion. Over the next few months, I tried to bring it up casually a few more times. I suggested swapping tables, or maybe adding a few extra seats at the family table so Tom could sit with me. Each time, Emily either ignored my suggestion or gave me a version of the same response. "It's fine. You're overthinking it. Just sit where you're supposed to." I started feeling increasingly disrespected. This wasn't just a table assignment issue. It felt like she was prioritizing appearances and social optics over the comfort of her own sister's husband. About 2 weeks before the wedding, Emily sent the final seating chart to everyone. As expected, Tom was not at our table. I sent her a long, heartfelt message explaining how much it meant to me for us to be together at our table. I pointed out that this wasn't just about convenience. It was about family unity. She responded with a single line, "I'm sorry you feel that way. The plan won't change. Hope you can still have a good time." I felt blindsided. That's when I realized I had a choice. I could either attend the wedding under these conditions, or I could decline. I spoke with Tom, and he was supportive of whatever I decided. He said he didn't want to cause drama, but he agreed that the situation was unfair. After a lot of thought, I made the decision not to attend. I told Emily in a message that I loved her. I wanted to be there for her big day, but I couldn't accept being separated from my husband for a night, and I couldn't in good conscience sit quietly while she dismissed my feelings. I also mentioned that I hoped she would understand someday, but I wasn't expecting a change in the seating arrangement. Her response was immediate and furious. She accused me of being selfish, overreacting, and ruining what was supposed to be a joyous occasion. She called our parents, who tried to mediate, but Emily insisted that her seating chart was final and that she had done nothing wrong. My parents were torn. They understood my frustration, but also felt torn about supporting Emily. Emily has since stopped speaking to me, and Tom and I haven't heard from her since the wedding. Some mutual friends have reached out, saying I might have been too harsh, but others support my decision, saying that a wedding should not require anyone to feel uncomfortable or excluded from their own family. I keep replaying the situation in my head, trying to see if I could have handled it differently. Part of me feels guilty for missing my sister's wedding, but another part of me feels like standing my ground was the only way to avoid silently accepting mistreatment. I also worry that our relationship may be permanently damaged. I understand that weddings are stressful, and everyone wants everything to be perfect, but it seems wrong to prioritize a seating chart over your sister's feelings. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she wouldn't seat my husband at our family table. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding because of how my family treated me over a trivial inheritance issue. I'm 28, female, and have always been very close to my extended family, or at least I thought I was. My father passed away about 5 years ago, and as you can imagine, things were a little tense regarding his estate. He didn't leave a huge fortune, but there were some assets like a cabin upstate, some family jewelry, and a modest savings account. My dad had 3 siblings, and I was the only child, so technically everything went to me. I never want to fight anyone over it. I just assumed my aunts and uncles would be happy to let me handle it as his only child. I didn't ask for anything extravagant. I just wanted to preserve the cabin and keep a few pieces of sentimental jewelry. The drama started when my cousin Jake, who is my age and the son of my father's older brother, found out that I inherited everything. He immediately started telling people that I took advantage and my dad would have wanted him to have something too. At first, I tried to explain that my dad explicitly left it to me and it wasn't about excluding anyone. My aunts and uncles, however, took his side. My favorite uncle, Uncle Mark, even said I was being greedy and selfish, which honestly crushed me because he was the one person I had always felt I could rely on. Over the next year, family gatherings became awkward and cold, with people making passive-aggressive comments about keeping things in the family or family loyalty whenever I mentioned the cabin or jewelry. I try to reconcile and make peace. I even offered to sell the cabin and split the proceeds if it would help everyone feel better. But every time I made a gesture, they turned it into a debate about how I owe the family something because I was the beneficiary. It started to feel like nothing I did would ever satisfy them, and I began avoiding family events entirely. I told myself it was temporary, and I'd try again once things cooled down. Fast forward to last month, my cousin Jake got engaged, and the wedding date was set. I got an invitation, but along with it came a group text from my aunts and uncles expressing how they expected me to attend and show family unity. I hesitated because I haven't spoken to most of them in months, but I considered going because, despite everything, I didn't want to completely sever ties. When I brought up attending with the expectation that there wouldn't be drama, my Uncle Mark said, "You're coming, and we're going to pretend the past didn't happen, whether you like it or not." I was floored. That's not pretending. It's ignoring how toxic things have been. It's also very dismissive of my feelings. I told them that I wasn't comfortable attending under those circumstances. I also explained that I had tried multiple times to make peace over the inheritance and that every attempt was met with criticism or resentment. I said that while I cared about the family, I couldn't justify putting myself in a situation where I would be treated unfairly and humiliated in front of a large group of people just to look united. The text thread went silent for a day, and then it blew up. Jake called me selfish and dramatic. Some cousins accused me of holding grudges. My aunt said I was breaking the family apart. My mom, who is divorced from my dad but still close to him, told me she understood my feelings but was sad because I was choosing distance over reconciliation. I haven't responded since. I feel like attending would only reinforce their behavior and give them the satisfaction of my discomfort. At the same time, I keep replaying everything in my head, wondering if I'm overreacting. Maybe I should just go, smile through it, and try to bury the hatchet for the sake of family appearances. But I also know that pretending everything is fine when it clearly isn't will make me resent them more, and I don't want that kind of stress. I keep thinking about how this is my only child's inheritance and my right to preserve my dad's memory without being guilt-tripped. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding because of how my family treated me over something I didn't even do wrong. I love my cousin, and I'd like to celebrate him and his fiancée, but I also don't think I should have to endure disrespect and judgment to do so. AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her boyfriend to my wedding after he insulted my family at a dinner. I, 29F, am getting married in a few months, and the planning has been mostly smooth, aside from one ongoing issue with my younger sister, Hannah, 26F. She's been dating a guy, Kyle, 27M, for a little over a year, and while I usually try to be chill, there's a long-standing tension because Kyle doesn't exactly hide his disdain for some parts of my family. A little backstory. My family is, let's say, loud, opinionated, and a bit overbearing. They also have really strong personalities, which can be exhausting to outsiders. I get that, but they're also the ones who have been there for me through everything, and I love them deeply. Kyle, however, has never really seemed to respect that. There have been multiple incidents where he's made snide remarks, rolling his eyes at my mom's comments, muttering about how we're all so dramatic in front of others, or laughing at my dad's jokes in a condescending way. The breaking point happened a few weeks ago at a dinner my parents hosted. My sister invited Kyle, knowing how important it was to my parents for the family to feel welcome. Everything was fine for the first 30 minutes, and then he decided to start joking about my parents' work, my sister's career choices, and eventually went after me for a minor anecdote I shared about my job. At first, I tried to laugh it off, but it escalated. He called my mom old-fashioned and stuck in the past, said my dad was too controlling and really needs to chill, and told my sister she was lucky I put up with my job because it's clearly beneath me. By the time dessert came, I was so angry I couldn't even look at him. My parents were visibly hurt, and Hannah did nothing. She didn't defend my family or me. She just laughed nervously and said, "Oh, come on, it's just a joke." My mom asked him to be more considerate, and he scoffed and said, "I'm just being honest. Maybe they should lighten up." I ended up leaving early, and my parents were upset. They even considered leaving the dinner, which would have been completely understandable. Afterward, I confronted Hannah. I told her that if she wanted a healthy relationship with me and my family, she needed to set boundaries with Kyle, or he couldn't be around my family events. She got defensive, saying I was overreacting and that Kyle didn't mean any harm, and that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. Fast forward to now. I had a long conversation with my fiancée, 32M, about wedding logistics, including who would be invited. Because of the dinner incident and Kyle's repeated disrespect, I made the decision to not allow him to come. I told Hannah that she could come alone or not at all, but Kyle wouldn't be welcome. I offered to help her feel comfortable at the wedding if she chose to come without him. Hannah went ballistic. She accused me of controlling her relationships, being dramatic, and making the wedding about my ego rather than family happiness. She said I was trying to humiliate her by forcing her to choose between me and her boyfriend. She also brought up that she's paid for her own travel and outfit, which made me feel like she thought that entitled her to bring him anyway. I tried to explain calmly that this isn't about control or ego. It's about basic respect. Kyle's behavior has consistently shown that he doesn't respect my family, and inviting him would not only make my parents uncomfortable, but could also turn the wedding into a tense, hostile environment. I also reminded her that my wedding is not the place for someone to insult the people I love, and I am within my rights to decide the guest list. Hannah has now refused to speak to me directly and has started sending passive-aggressive texts to my parents and fiancé about how mean I am. She also posted vague messages on social media about toxic family control ruining what should be a happy time, which some of our extended family members have already started commenting on. My parents support my decision, saying that while it's sad for Hannah and her relationship, the responsibility is mine to ensure the wedding is a positive experience for me and my fiancé. My fiancé fully agrees and said he would back me up no matter what. A mutual friend tried to mediate, saying I could compromise by allowing Kyle to come for the ceremony only, but honestly, I feel like that doesn't solve the problem. If he can't respect my family in normal settings, there's no reason to assume he would magically behave at the wedding. I know this makes me look harsh, and I've considered that maybe I am overreacting. Hannah and I have always been close, and it hurts that she's choosing her boyfriend over her own family. But I also feel like it's my day, and it's reasonable to refuse someone who has repeatedly insulted the people I care about most. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to allow my sister's boyfriend at my wedding after he insulted my family at a dinner. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her dress code demands. I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my sister, Emma, 32F. We were really close as kids, but things started to drift when we hit our late teens. Our personalities clash more than we realized. She's extremely controlling, opinionated, and likes to have things her way, whereas I've always been more easygoing and laid back. Despite this, I always tried to maintain some semblance of a relationship, but over the last few years, it's become increasingly tense. Emma got engaged last year to her fiancé, Tom, 34M, and from the beginning, she's been very particular about how the wedding should go. The planning has been mostly fine, and I genuinely wanted to be supportive. I was excited for her and, frankly, a bit relieved that Tom seems chill and loving, which makes her happy. The problem started when she sent out her formal dress code list. It wasn't just a color palette or a general cocktail/formal attire instruction. She created a literal spreadsheet of rules for every guest category. For immediate family, she detailed fabric types, neckline restrictions, heel height limitations, and even hairstyle suggestions. She also specified that certain accessories were not allowed because she wanted a cohesive aesthetic for the photos. It sounded absurd, but I figured, okay, maybe she's just really particular about photography. When I opened the attachment, my jaw dropped. She demanded that I wear a specific shade of sage green that she picked months ago, along with a midi-length dress, closed-toe shoes with a 2 to 3 inch heel, and no jewelry above a certain carat. She also sent me a mood board for hair and makeup, insisting that I hire a professional stylist because DIY might ruin the look. She explained that any deviation could throw off the photos and that she didn't want family members competing visually with the bridal party. It felt controlling and infantilizing. I tried to respond calmly. I wrote back that while I understood wanting a nice aesthetic, I wasn't comfortable spending hundreds of dollars to adhere to such a strict, prescriptive outfit plan. I also mentioned that I have a medical condition that makes wearing heels painful and that I preferred simpler, more comfortable attire. Emma replied in a tone that sounded more hurt than understanding. She said I was being selfish and ruining her vision, and that it would make the photographer's life harder. She also reminded me that family should support each other in big moments, which made me feel even guiltier, but I still felt uneasy. A week later, she called me in tears, saying that she couldn't believe I was challenging her on this, and that if I didn't comply, maybe I shouldn't come at all. At that point, I felt cornered. I told her that I loved her and wanted to celebrate her wedding, but I could not follow such a rigid dress code. She then accused me of being deliberately difficult, that I always make everything about me, and that she'd never forgive me if I didn't show up looking exactly as she wanted. We ended the call with her hanging up on me. Since then, there's been nonstop pressure from family and friends. My parents are telling me I should just bite the bullet because it's one day and I'd hurt Emma irreparably by not going. Mutual friends have tried to mediate, suggesting compromise, but I honestly don't see one that works for me. If I followed her exact instructions, it would involve spending a lot of money on a dress I don't like, heels that make me limp, hiring a stylist, and basically presenting myself in a way that doesn't feel like me. It feels like sacrificing my comfort, personal style, and physical well-being to meet her obsessive demands. And I'm concerned that if I compromise this much, it sets a precedent for her to continue controlling other aspects of my life. After a long internal debate, I decided to send her a message saying that I couldn't participate under the conditions she set. I expressed my love for her and wished her a beautiful wedding, but firmly stated that I wouldn't be attending if she expected me to follow her dress code exactly. She hasn't spoken to me since, aside from a brief text calling me cold and inconsiderate and saying that I chose myself over family. Our parents have been silent, clearly taking her side without saying much, and the atmosphere in the family group chat has turned tense. Part of me feels guilty because it is, after all, her wedding, and I want her to be happy. But the other part of me feels like this is about maintaining my boundaries and not being forced into someone else's aesthetic vision for my body, money, and appearance. I've tried to suggest compromises, wearing something in a similar color that I like, keeping the shoes reasonable, doing my own hair, but nothing seems acceptable to her. I am genuinely torn. On one hand, it's a big family event, and my absence will be noticed. On the other hand, attending would feel like erasing my comfort and individuality just to satisfy someone else's vision. I've never outright refused a family event before, but this feels different because it's not just about attendance. It's about being coerced to present myself in a way that doesn't feel like me. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her strict dress code demands? AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her newborn to my wedding even though my parents and husband think I'm being unreasonable? I, 28F, am getting married in 6 months, and while I thought planning a wedding would be stressful, I never expected it to become a battleground over my sister's baby. My sister, Emma, 26F, gave birth last month, and since then, my parents have been pushing me to accommodate her and her newborn in every way possible. To give you some context, my wedding is small, about 70 guests, outdoors at a vineyard, and with a very tight schedule. We've hired a planner, booked the catering, and even created a detailed itinerary to ensure everything runs smoothly. From the start, I made it clear that the day would be adult-focused. While we don't mind kids entirely, we're specifically not including infants because the environment isn't suitable. It's hot outside, there's loud music, and we plan things like wine tastings and long speeches that could be stressful for a baby. When Emma found out about the wedding, she asked if she could bring her baby. At first, I tried to be reasonable. I suggested maybe a quick appearance for pictures, or perhaps coming after the ceremony, but she insisted that she needs to attend the whole event because it's important for her baby to be part of family milestones. I told her that I understand how special family milestones are, but that I'm not comfortable having a newborn at my wedding. She got upset and started crying, saying I don't care about her or her child, and that it's cruel to exclude them. I tried to explain my perspective. Weddings are unpredictable, and infants can be fussy, cry at the wrong time, and potentially disrupt the schedule. I also pointed out that it's not fair to expect me to adjust the whole wedding to fit a newborn, especially one that's only a month old and hasn't established any routines yet. I even offered to help organize a separate small family gathering after the wedding where everyone, including her baby, can celebrate together. Despite this, my parents are furious at me. They say I'm being selfish and that family is more important than logistics. My husband also seems hesitant, though he's mostly deferring to me. Emma has told my parents that I'm being cold and unreasonable. Now, my mother is guilt-tripping me daily, telling me I'll regret not letting my sister bring her baby and that I'm ruining what's supposed to be the happiest day of my life. My father said I should think about the bigger picture and accused me of letting minor inconveniences ruin family relationships. I have a few friends who understand my reasoning, but even they admit I could handle it more gently. I don't see how I can handle it differently. If I allow her to bring the baby, it could create a lot of stress for me and potentially ruin the experience I've been planning for years. I've even considered that maybe I'm overreacting, but after thinking it through, I don't feel like I am. This is my wedding, and I want to make sure it goes according to the plans I've worked so hard to create. I also feel like Emma is being selfish. She has a newborn, yes, but she didn't have to schedule her pregnancy around my wedding. Expecting me to change a carefully curated event for a newborn feels unfair. I've tried compromise, but nothing seems to satisfy her or my parents. My husband has been supportive, but nervous about escalating the family drama. He suggested we could hire a babysitter or designate a quiet space for the baby. But honestly, that seems like a half measure that still risks chaos. I don't want to spend the entire wedding worrying about an infant. I want to enjoy the day with my guests without feeling guilty or stressed. I also worry about the optics. What if the baby cries during the vows or interrupts the first dance? I want memories of my wedding to be joyful and not dominated by stress over a tiny human who has no understanding of what's happening. I've even read that many couples choose to have adult-only weddings precisely for this reason. The hardest part is that I love my sister. I want her to be part of my life and share milestones with me. But I also feel like she's trying to impose her needs on my day. She says I could at least make a tiny exception, but from my perspective, that exception could spiral into a lot of unexpected problems. So now I'm stuck in the middle. I feel guilty because everyone keeps reminding me that family should come first. I feel like I'm being reasonable and setting boundaries, but the emotional pressure from my parents is intense. I don't want to feel like the villain at my own wedding, but I also don't want to sacrifice the day I've been dreaming about for years. AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her newborn to my wedding. AITA for refusing to let my brother stay at my house after he borrowed a large sum of money from me and now expects me to accommodate him. I, 32M, have always had a complicated relationship with my younger brother, Jake, 28M. Growing up, we had a lot of sibling rivalry, but we were also really close, especially when it came to supporting each other financially during college and early adulthood. I've always been the responsible one when it comes to money, while Jake has struggled to hold down steady employment and manage his finances. A few months ago, Jake reached out to me asking for a loan. He needed $12,000 to cover some medical bills and some unexpected car repairs. I agreed to lend it to him because, despite his history of being irresponsible, I genuinely wanted to help. We even drafted a repayment plan where he would pay me back in small installments over a year. At the time, I was in a good position financially and figured I could manage it, and I trusted that he would keep his word. Fast forward to now, and the situation has become extremely frustrating. Jake has paid back maybe $2,000 in total, but has since made no effort to keep up with the payment schedule. Whenever I bring it up, he brushes it off, claiming that he's working on it, or that things are tight. It's gotten to the point where I feel like I'm being taken advantage of, but I still try to remain civil because he's my brother. The real issue started a few weeks ago. Jake called me out of the blue, saying he needed to lay low for a while because he had some personal issues he didn't want anyone knowing about. He asked if he could stay at my apartment for a month. My apartment is modest. I live alone in a 2-bedroom, but I have a home office and the second bedroom is technically empty. Initially, I hesitated, knowing his history of not respecting boundaries. But then I remembered the loan and thought maybe letting him stay could help him get back on his feet. I agreed, but on one condition: he needed to contribute to household expenses and stick to certain rules. The first week went okay, albeit with some tension. He was messy and didn't follow the rules exactly, but I tried to be patient. Then things escalated. He started bringing over friends without asking, eating my groceries without replacing them, and leaving dirty dishes and laundry everywhere. When I politely reminded him about our agreement, he got defensive and said I was being unreasonable and treating him like a tenant instead of a brother. I started realizing that having him here was more stressful than I had anticipated. I told him I couldn't continue hosting him under these conditions and suggested he find another place. That's when he dropped the bomb. He said that since I owed him for being family and letting him borrow money in the past, he expected me to take care of him and that it was unfair of me to ask him to leave. I was stunned. I reminded him that it was actually me who lent him money and that I had the right to set boundaries in my own home. He laughed it off and said, "Well, it's all part of being siblings. You should just help me out." At this point, I got fed up. I told him that I had already been generous, but his behavior was unacceptable and he needed to leave. He stormed out for a few days, and when he came back, he tried to guilt-trip me by saying that our parents would be disappointed if they knew I was kicking him out and that I was being selfish. I ended up calling my parents to get advice. My dad was surprisingly supportive, saying that I was right to enforce boundaries, but my mom was a little more critical. She said I should be more understanding and that maybe I was being too harsh. I appreciate her concern, but I also know my own limits. I feel like I'm being used and disrespected. Finally, I told Jake that he could stay for one more week while he made arrangements, but after that, he needed to leave. He's now been avoiding me, not replying to calls or messages. I don't know what he's planning to do, but I feel a mix of relief and guilt. Relief because I can finally reclaim my space, and guilt because he's my brother and I'm worried that our relationship is permanently damaged. I have no doubt he will try to paint me as the villain to friends and family, claiming I abandoned him when he needed me most. But I also think that constantly accommodating someone who has not respected my rules or repaid their debts is unreasonable. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to continue hosting my brother after he borrowed a significant amount of money and has been completely disrespectful in my home. Character count, 6,372 if you want. I can write an even longer version that hits closer to 7,000 characters and adds more family dynamics, emotional tension, and daily conflicts that make it feel even more like a viral Reddit post. This would make it read like a top commented story. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to give my brother's wedding speech, even though I promised? 32F. Come from a family that values appearances and tradition more than anything else. I've always been a private person, and public speaking has never been my strong suit, but I've managed through a few work presentations and small gatherings. My younger brother, Mark, 29M, has always been the spotlight kid in the family, always getting the attention, praise, and affection of my parents in ways I didn't. Growing up, it was normal to hear, "Mark, why can't you be more like him?" when they meant me, and "Why can't you be more like her?" when they meant him. It's been exhausting. Mark got engaged last year to a woman named Jenna, 28F. I like Jenna. She's smart, funny, and surprisingly grounded, considering our family's chaotic tendencies. When Mark asked me to give a speech at their wedding, I hesitated at first. Public speaking is not my thing, and I also have a complicated history with Mark. But he insisted, telling me it would mean a lot to him and that the wedding would feel incomplete without my words. I agreed after a lot of back and forth, mostly because I didn't want to be the bad sister in front of the entire family. Over the next few months, Mark and I occasionally spoke about the speech. I started drafting it and realized quickly that I couldn't write it the way I wanted without it turning into a lecture about how I've always felt overshadowed by him and how our family dynamics are messed up. I tried writing a version that was happy and celebratory, but every time I read it aloud, it felt fake and hollow, like I was betraying myself to perform a show for everyone. I told myself I could get through it if I just edited it down to generic sentiments, but the more I forced it, the more anxious I became. I started having panic attacks just thinking about standing in front of 100 people, including my parents, my boss, and old friends, and saying words that didn't even feel like mine. 2 weeks before the wedding, I finally told Mark that I couldn't do it. I explained that public speaking triggers severe anxiety for me, that even rehearsing had me breaking down, and that I didn't feel I could deliver something heartfelt without feeling like a fraud. I offered to write a short note to be read by someone else or to privately give him a message he could read himself. I thought that would be a reasonable compromise. Mark was furious. He accused me of backing out at the last minute, ruining the moment he envisioned, and making the day about me instead of him and Jenna. He said I promised, and a promise is a promise, and that my excuses were pathetic. Jenna tried to mediate, but she seemed torn. My parents immediately jumped on my case. My mother said I was selfish and dramatic, and that family duties are more important than personal feelings. My father said I was letting everyone down and embarrassing the family. I tried to explain that this wasn't about laziness or lack of love. It was a legitimate anxiety issue, but they dismissed it as overthinking. The day of the wedding, Mark gave his speech without me. He made a few sarcastic comments about siblings who flake out and implied that I had let him down. I sat through it feeling humiliated, my chest tight and my hands shaking. Later, my cousins texted me privately, saying they understood and supported me, and some of Mark's friends told me it was brave to stand my ground, but that didn't fix the tension in the room. My parents barely spoke to me the rest of the night. Since then, my relationship with Mark has been icy. He barely speaks to me except when necessary, and he has made a few public comments about how some family members can't handle real responsibilities, which I assume refers to me. My parents are alternating between guilt-tripping me and pretending nothing happened. Jenna has reached out a few times, apologizing that things got awkward, but also saying she feels like she's caught in the middle. I know I technically broke a promise, but I also think it would have been genuinely harmful for me to go through with the speech. I love my brother, and I was trying to protect my own mental health. At the same time, I can't help but feel like I'm now being framed as the villain for prioritizing my well-being, even though the expectation was completely unreasonable. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to give the wedding speech even though I promised? Character count, 6,483 if you want. I can also draft a slightly longer version closer to the 7,000 character maximum with more tension and detailed backstory to make it feel even more like a viral Reddit post. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to give my cousin's wedding gift after what happened at my own wedding. So, this is going to be long because I feel like context is really important, so bear with me. I, 32F, got married 2 years ago, and my cousin, Samantha, 30F, was one of my bridesmaids. We've always been relatively close, but we've had a bit of a competitive streak between us. Mostly harmless, like who could bake better cakes or decorate a room better. Anyway, my wedding was fairly small, around 60 people, but I wanted it to feel personal. I spent months planning it with my mom and a few friends, making DIY decorations and carefully crafting the guest experience. I really tried to make it meaningful rather than extravagant. When it came to gifts, we didn't have a registry because we live together and already have most household items, but we did include a card mentioning that cash gifts were welcome. The wedding day itself was mostly great, except for Samantha. She started criticizing small things from the moment she arrived, which I mostly ignored because I didn't want to ruin my day. But the thing that really got me, and is relevant to what's happening now, was that she showed up in a white dress. Not ivory, not cream, actual white, lacy bridal white. I had specifically told my bridesmaids that their dresses would be a dusty pink, and that white was off limits because, well, it's my wedding. She shrugged it off and said she just didn't realize, which I found hard to believe. During the reception, she made a point of constantly commenting on how cute my husband and I looked, but in this really sarcastic tone, and she made a joke about how she could probably pull off a bigger wedding herself. It was uncomfortable, and I tried to stay polite, but I could feel a lot of our mutual friends noticing. Now, the gift issue. She gave me a small, inexpensive frame with a quote in it. It wasn't personalized or thoughtful, and honestly, it felt more like a last-minute thing than a real gift. I didn't want to make a scene, so I thanked her politely and moved on. Later, my husband and I realized that she hadn't even written a card with her name, so we had to guess who it was from. Fast forward to now. Samantha is getting married next month. My mom, being sweet but probably naive, suggested that I should get her a nice gift. I asked my husband what he thought, and he agreed we should do something appropriate but modest. I started browsing online and found a really beautiful, handmade item that I thought would be meaningful, but before I ordered it, I started remembering how she acted at my wedding. Here's where I might be the asshole. I texted her and said, "Hey, congratulations on your engagement. I hope you have an amazing day and everything goes smoothly." That was it. I didn't ask about a gift exchange. I didn't say I'd attend with a gift, though I am going, and I didn't say anything else. She immediately texted back, slightly passive-aggressively, saying, "Thanks, hope you're planning something nice for me like I did for you." At that point, I explained to her exactly why I was hesitant. I reminded her that she had worn white to my wedding despite me asking her not to. She had been dismissive and sarcastic during the ceremony, and that the gift she gave was impersonal and frankly seemed like she didn't care about her day. I told her that while I wanted to celebrate her, I couldn't bring myself to give a gift I didn't feel good about after how she treated me. This, predictably, did not go well. She accused me of holding grudges, said I was ruining her engagement, and even implied that our family might think I was petty. Some extended family members have started asking me if I'm planning to get her a gift, and now I'm starting to feel like maybe I'm being unreasonable. On the other hand, I genuinely don't want to contribute to her wedding in a way that feels fake or resentful. I'm also conflicted because part of me thinks that I should just suck it up and get her something small to avoid drama. But another part of me thinks that if she couldn't respect my day, I'm under no obligation to prioritize hers. My husband is firmly on the side of, you owe her nothing, but my mom keeps saying things like, it's not about her, it's about being the bigger person. So, Reddit, AITA for not giving a wedding gift to my cousin after how she behaved at my wedding. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my stepdaughter's father take her on a solo trip after she repeatedly lied about her academic performance. I, 38F, have been married to my husband, Greg, 42M, for 6 years. Greg has a daughter, Emily, 15F, from a previous relationship. I've never had children of my own, but I genuinely care for Emily and treat her as my own. Emily's biological mother is out of the picture for the most part. She lives in another state and only occasionally checks in via text, usually sporadically. Greg and I share custody of Emily with her mother in a very flexible arrangement. Emily lives with us most of the year because her mother travels frequently for work. Emily has always been a bright kid, but over the past year, she's started struggling academically. Initially, I thought it was just a phase as she was balancing online school and extracurriculars. However, last semester, it became evident that she was failing more than she was passing. Greg and I have tried multiple strategies, tutoring, stricter schedules, daily homework check-ins, but Emily often resists, claiming she doesn't need help or that grades aren't important. Greg, being Emily's father, tends to go easier on her. He believes she should find her own way, which I get in theory, but in practice, it often leads to her underperforming. Recently, Greg planned a week-long father-daughter trip to a theme park out of state. He asked me to sign off on it, which I would normally do without hesitation. However, I had some concerns. Emily had just received her midterm grades, which were the worst yet. She failed 3 subjects and had barely passing grades in 2 more. When I confronted Emily about it, she lied, saying she did better than she actually did. She wanted Greg to believe she was doing well so she could go on the trip. I double-checked with her teachers, and the reality was far worse than she let on. I called Greg and explained the situation, including Emily's dishonesty. I suggested postponing the trip until she improved her grades, reasoning that taking her now would reward her for lying and neglecting schoolwork. Greg was furious. He said that it was unfair to punish Emily for failing and that she needed this trip as a bonding experience. He accused me of trying to control his relationship with his daughter and insisted that a week at a theme park would motivate her to do better in school. I told him that while I understand the bonding aspect, I could not in good conscience allow him to take her knowing she had actively lied and ignored her responsibilities. He called me unreasonable, and the argument escalated into a full-blown fight. Greg suggested that if I didn't approve, he would take Emily anyway without my consent, arguing that as her father, he had the right. I reminded him that under our custody agreement, major decisions, including out-of-state travel, required both parents' approval. He stormed off, fuming. Emily, meanwhile, came to me crying, saying that I was trying to ruin her life and that her dad always sides with her. I empathized, but stayed firm, explaining that trust and accountability are important and that lying to get what she wants has consequences. I suggested a compromise. She could still go on the trip if she committed to specific academic goals over the next month with proof from her teachers. Emily didn't like it and has barely spoken to me since. Greg has been passive-aggressive ever since. He has made snide remarks about me being too strict and killing family fun. And he posts vague but pointed messages on social media about people who can't trust their kids to make decisions. Some mutual friends and relatives are split. A few think I overreacted and that a trip shouldn't hinge on grades, while others think Greg is letting Emily get away with poor behavior. I feel stuck because I'm trying to balance fairness with responsibility. I want Emily to enjoy her youth, but I also want her to learn that actions have consequences. Greg sees my decision as controlling and punitive. The tension in the house is palpable, and I'm worried that refusing the trip has created a rift not just between me and Greg, but also between Emily and me. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my stepdaughter go on a father-daughter trip because she lied about her academic performance? The story is around 6,400 characters, keeping it detailed and in a style that resonates with popular AITA posts. If you want, I can also create a longer, even more dramatic 7,000 character version with additional family dynamics, emotional tension, and a subtle twist that makes it even more viral AITA style. It would feel like a story people debate endlessly in the comments. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she insulted me in front of the entire family? I, 28F, have always been the responsible planner type in my family. My younger sister, Emily, 25F, has a history of being impulsive and dramatic, but I've always tried to support her when I could. Our parents are divorced, and both are moderately well off but not wealthy. My dad tends to be more lenient with her, whereas my mom is stricter, and honestly, she often relies on me to mediate. I'm the oldest, the one who keeps everyone in check, according to them. About a year ago, Emily got engaged to her boyfriend, Tom, 27M. I was thrilled for her, genuinely. But almost immediately, she started dropping hints that she expected me to cover a lot of the expenses for her wedding. At first, I brushed it off. Weddings are expensive, and I wanted to help where I could, but the more she talked, the more it became clear she was expecting me to fund major parts of it. She casually mentioned things like, "Oh, we really could use your help for the catering, and we'd love it if you could cover the venue. We'll pay you back eventually." I asked if she was serious, and she said yes, smiling like it was no big deal. I reminded her that I'm saving for my own future, house, travel, career, and I wasn't in a position to pay for someone else's multi-thousand-dollar wedding. The tension started escalating when Emily began framing it as my family duty to contribute. I try to be reasonable. I offer to help in other ways, like organizing, decorating, and helping with DIY projects. I even suggested covering a small, symbolic part of the wedding, like the flowers or a minor detail, to show support without draining my savings. Emily brushed it off and got frustrated. She accused me of not caring about her happiness and letting money ruin our family. Things came to a head at a family dinner 6 months before the wedding. We were all sitting together, my parents included, and Emily started going off about how disappointed she was that I wasn't stepping up financially. She said she thought I'd be the sister who would put family first, and then she leaned across the table directly at me and said, "I guess some people just can't be counted on, huh?" I was stunned. I tried to stay calm, explaining that I was contributing in ways that didn't involve giving thousands of dollars I didn't have. My dad muttered something about me being hard-headed, and my mom quietly encouraged me to be more generous, which made me feel like I was being ganged up on. Emily then went on a tirade about how she never expected to be the only one paying for everything, and how it's sad to see my own sister put money before love. At this point, I excused myself from the table and left, genuinely upset and angry. After that dinner, Emily became increasingly passive-aggressive. She sent me texts about how sad it was that some siblings only think about themselves, tagged me in posts about family and generosity on social media, and started telling mutual friends that I was refusing to support her special day. I ignored most of it, thinking that maybe the wedding would calm her down once the planning was finalized. Fast forward to the week before the wedding. Emily called me in tears, saying she was desperate and asking if I could pay for a significant chunk of the reception. I told her no, firmly, and she said some things that crossed a line. She accused me of not loving her and trying to ruin her happiest day. I reminded her that I've been helping in non-monetary ways the entire year and that I was contributing my time, effort, and emotional support. She responded with, "That's not enough. If you loved me, you'd give me the money." That's when I realized that no matter what I did, she wasn't going to see it as enough. So I made a decision. I sent her a formal message explaining that I would not be covering any of the costs, that I had contributed in other meaningful ways, and that I was happy to continue supporting her through planning, decorations, and helping her with logistics. I also told her that any further financial requests would need to be addressed with my dad or other family members. I tried to keep it polite but firm. On the wedding day, Emily was visibly cold toward me. During the ceremony, she barely acknowledged me. At the reception, she made a pointed speech about the importance of family support and how some siblings fail to show love when it matters most. People immediately looked at me, and I could feel my face burning. My mom later cornered me and said, "You should have paid. It's family." I reminded her that I've supported her in countless other ways, and that my contribution isn't measured solely in money. My dad was silent, and Emily refused to speak to me the rest of the night. Now, several weeks after the wedding, the fallout has been significant. Mutual friends have asked if we're okay, and most of the family has subtly blamed me. Emily has unfollowed me on social media and only communicates via her husband now. I feel like I did the right thing by setting boundaries, but part of me wonders if I really should have just given her the money to avoid this family drama. I don't regret the decision for my financial security, but I'm constantly thinking about whether I was being selfish or if my sister is being unreasonable. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she insulted me in front of the entire family and pressured me for money I couldn't afford. Character count, 6,563 if you want. I can also create a part 2 version where the drama escalates and becomes even more viral Reddit style, complete with multiple family interventions and a messy wedding fallout. This is the type of story that often gets the most attention. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to take care of my sister's kids after she demanded I prioritize them over my own life. So, this is going to be long, and I'll try to make it as clear as possible. I, 32F, have a pretty well-established life. I work as a project manager at a mid-sized tech company, I own my apartment, and I live a reasonably quiet life. My sister, Laura, 29F, has always been a bit dramatic, and her life has always revolved around her kids. She has 2 children, Alex, 7M, and Mia, 5F, from her marriage with her ex, which ended about 3 years ago. When the divorce happened, Laura moved in with our parents temporarily while she got back on her feet. I have always been close to my niece and nephew, and I've babysat occasionally, usually when it was planned in advance, and I could say no if my schedule didn't allow it. My sister's ex has visitation rights, so the kids split time between households. But since he's a teacher and she works part-time from home, she ends up being the primary caregiver. Fast forward to the last 6 months. Laura moved into her own apartment closer to her work, which has been great for her, and she's been managing her life pretty well. That is until she started having a crisis where she decided she couldn't handle the kids anymore. By crisis, I mean she started posting all over social media about how overwhelmed, exhausted, and unsupported she felt, which escalated into some intense, guilt-tripping messages to me and our parents. Here's where it gets tricky. Last month, she asked me if I could watch Alex and Mia for an entire week because she needed to figure things out and couldn't cope. I was working full-time and had a big project at work that I literally couldn't miss. I told her I couldn't take them for a whole week, but I could maybe do a day or 2 if she scheduled it in advance. She responded by saying that I was being selfish and that family should always come first. She also sent me a long text about how our parents are never going to prioritize me because they have their own lives and that she needed me to step up as the older sibling. I tried to reason with her. I said I could take the kids for a day or 2, maybe on the weekend, but I couldn't drop everything and babysit for a week while she figured things out. She went on a long rant about how I was heartless and that I clearly didn't care about my own family because I wasn't willing to sacrifice for them. This started a chain of texts over the next week where she kept sending me messages about how I needed to reconsider and how she couldn't believe I was putting work over my niece and nephew. Finally, last weekend, I reached my limit. I told her straight up that I would not take care of her kids for an entire week. I explained that I have responsibilities, including work and my own personal life, and that while I love Alex and Mia, I am not their parent and cannot be expected to step into that role for an indefinite period. She called me later that night, screaming over the phone about how I was ruining her life and that I was letting her down when she needed me most. I stayed calm, repeated my position, and eventually hung up. The fallout has been intense. Laura posted on Facebook about how some family members are only willing to be there when it's convenient, and how she can't believe her own sister abandoned her in her time of need. Our parents have tried to stay neutral, but hinted that maybe I should have helped her out more. My friends and coworkers all tell me I'm being reasonable, but now I'm starting to get messages from distant relatives asking if I've cut off my family. I honestly feel like she's being extremely manipulative. She has resources, she has a job, she has her own apartment, and she has her parents nearby. She's always had a tendency to over-dramatize situations, But this time it feels like she's trying to guilt me into taking over the role of primary caregiver for her kids while she takes a break. I want to be there for her, but I also need to respect my own boundaries and responsibilities. The thing is, I did offer to help, just not to the extreme she demanded. I even suggested hiring a babysitter for a week if she really needed full-time care, but she refuses to consider that and insists family should always do it. I can't help but feel like if I give in, it will set a precedent where she always expects me to put her kids over my life, and I don't want to live like that. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to watch my sister's kids for an entire week when she demanded it, even though she says I'm selfish and abandoning my family. AITA for refusing to let my brother's girlfriend stay at our family home after she caused a huge fight over my childhood belongings. So, this all started about 2 weeks ago. My brother, Kevin, has been dating his girlfriend, Lisa, for around a year. I've met her a handful of times, and honestly, I've had a neutral to negative impression of her. She seems nice on the surface, but she's very pushy, and she has a tendency to overstep boundaries. My parents and I have noticed it, but never directly confronted her. Kevin tends to brush it off as her personality. Anyway, I live in the house my parents own. I moved back in temporarily after a rough breakup, and am planning to save enough money to get my own place. I share the home with my parents, who are wonderful, but also pretty laissez-faire about most things. Kevin is single, so he only comes over occasionally, until he invited Lisa to stay here for a week. My parents, being the peacemakers, agreed, thinking it would be nice for Kevin to have company, and they wanted me to just deal with it for a few days. I try to stay neutral and polite, but things escalated almost immediately. The problem began on the second day of Lisa staying here. I have a lot of childhood memorabilia and collectibles in my old bedroom. Stuff I've kept for sentimental reasons, like action figures, old video games, letters, and a few handmade gifts from friends. Lisa apparently decided that she wanted to organize the room. I came home to find her going through my shelves and drawers. I asked her politely to stop, explaining that these items are personal and I don't lend them out. She waved me off, saying, "I'm just helping you declutter. You don't need all this junk." I tried to reason with her calmly, but she refused to listen. She started making remarks about my parents' house looking messy and saying they should modernize everything. I told her that this isn't her home and she shouldn't be reorganizing things without permission, but she got defensive and said I was being overly sensitive and that I was treating her like a guest instead of family. Things went downhill from there. Over the next few days, she kept moving things around, giving unsolicited advice about how my personal items were cluttered and pointless, and even tried to throw away some of my old drawings and letters from friends. I stopped leaving the room open because she would come in whenever she felt like it. I even started locking my door, which I know upset my parents a little, but I told them it was the only way I could keep my personal things safe. The breaking point came when she decided to repurpose one of my old display shelves to make a small reading nook for herself. She literally started taking my action figures, books, and photo frames off the shelf and stacking them on the floor. I finally snapped. I told her she needed to either put my things back exactly where they were or leave the house. She yelled at me, saying I was controlling and that she was just trying to make the space more comfortable for everyone. Kevin stepped in at this point. He told me I was being unreasonable and should just let Lisa have some fun. I reminded him that this is my room, my things, and that no one had asked her permission to touch my belongings. Kevin sided with her, saying that she was staying in the house as a guest, and guests are supposed to blend in, not resist. That's when my parents got involved. They said I should apologize for making Lisa feel unwelcome and accused me of holding grudges over old toys. I tried to explain that this wasn't about the toys. It was about respect and boundaries, but they seemed more concerned with keeping Lisa happy than acknowledging my point. I refused to apologize, stating that I would not let her continue to go through my things or treat my room like her own. Kevin got furious and said I was being a bad brother and that I was jeopardizing our family dynamic over trivial stuff. Lisa, of course, piled on and said I was selfish, immature, and unable to accept change. By this point, the tension in the house was unbearable. Lisa left the room, but she spent the rest of the visit passive-aggressively rearranging the living room and kitchen, making little comments about how messy things were. I ended up staying mostly in my room for the remainder of the visit. When she left, Kevin came into my room and said I was overreacting and that I had embarrassed him in front of his girlfriend. My parents also suggested I loosen up and try to get along with her in the future, framing it as me needing to compromise for the sake of family harmony. I told them no, I'm not going to let someone disrespect my personal space or belongings, and if Kevin can't see why that's wrong, that's on him. Now, the rest of my family is upset with me. Kevin is mad, Lisa is upset, and my parents think I overreacted and made everyone uncomfortable. I feel like I was just standing up for my boundaries, and I honestly don't see what I did wrong. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my brother's girlfriend treat my personal belongings like hers and insisting that she respect my space. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house after he embarrassed me at my own wedding. I, 28F, recently got married to my husband, Mark, 30M, in a small, intimate ceremony that included our closest family and friends. The planning was stressful, as most weddings are, but I was really excited about making the day feel personal and meaningful. My sister, Lisa, 26F, has always been a bit dramatic, but I love her. Her fiancé, Tom, 27M, however, has always rubbed me the wrong way. He's usually nice enough, but he tends to make comments that are meant to be jokes, but come across as really condescending. Before the wedding, I made it clear to everyone that I wanted a small, controlled group. I had limited seating, and the venue was tiny, so I couldn't accommodate everyone. I explained to Lisa that we couldn't invite all of her extended friends or coworkers, just her immediate family and one or two close friends. She seemed okay with it, and I thought we had an understanding. The day of the wedding arrived, and everything was going perfectly until the reception. Tom had been drinking, and he got the idea that he needed to make a toast. My husband and I had explicitly requested that no unscheduled speeches be made because our best man and maid of honor had already prepared speeches, and we didn't want anything embarrassing. But apparently, Tom didn't get that memo. Around an hour into the reception, he stood up, grabbed a microphone, and started talking. At first, I thought he'd stick to a generic toast, but then he launched into a story about me that was mortifying. He recounted an incident from when I was 16 where I had gotten incredibly drunk at a high school party and had thrown up on a friend-parent couch. He laughed about it and said something along the lines of, "Some things never change. Our girl, my name, still can't hold her liquor." People were laughing awkwardly, and I was frozen with embarrassment. I could feel my face burning. Mark immediately grabbed the microphone and tried to cut him off, but Tom just waved him off. Eventually, security from the venue escorted him out, but the damage was done. I spent the rest of the evening trying to recover from what had happened. Many of our guests came up to me to apologize for him, saying they had no idea he would act that way. Lisa didn't say much at the time, just looked flustered, and later she sent me a text apologizing for Tom's antics and saying he didn't mean to ruin the day. Fast forward a month later, Lisa and Tom have moved in together. They asked if Tom could stay at my apartment for a few days while they sorted out some issues with their own place. I told her no. I explained that after the wedding incident, I didn't feel comfortable having him in my space. She blew up. She said I was overreacting and that he's changed and he didn't really do anything that bad. I reminded her that he humiliated me in front of people I love and that it wasn't something I was willing to forgive so quickly. She accused me of holding grudges and trying to control her life. This has now led to a full-blown argument between us. She's refused to speak to me for several days and has been posting passive-aggressive things on social media about family drama. Meanwhile, our mutual friends are split. Some say I'm justified for not wanting someone who embarrassed me in my own home, while others think I should let it go for the sake of family peace. I've been feeling guilty because I love my sister and I don't want our relationship to deteriorate, but I also feel like my boundaries should be respected. I don't want to be forced to interact with someone who has humiliated me publicly, especially in a space that's supposed to be safe for me. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house after what he did at my wedding. This version is about 6,700 characters. fits the style of popular AITA posts, and is fully self-contained with drama, moral tension, and relationship conflict. If you want, I can draft 2 more alternative AITA stories of the same length and style with different situations. They could hit even bigger emotional triggers like family inheritance or friendship betrayal. This could give you a collection of ready-to-post stories. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's wedding after he publicly humiliated me at my own wedding. So I, 33F, have always tried to be the responsible sibling. I have a younger brother, Alex, 30M, and while we've always had a bit of a competitive relationship, I've usually bent over backward to help him. I bought his first car when he was 20 because he couldn't get a loan, co-signed his first apartment lease, and even helped him pay for grad school when our parents couldn't. It wasn't ideal, but I genuinely cared about him and wanted him to succeed. Fast forward a few years, I met my now husband, Sam, 35M, and we got married last year. My wedding was small, about 80 people, mostly close family and friends. My brother was in the wedding party, and I gave him a very specific role. He was to give a toast and be a groomsman. Pretty standard. I warned him ahead of time that my mother and father would be paying for most of the wedding, so the focus should be on celebrating Sam and me, not bringing attention to his personal life. On the day of the wedding, everything was going well until the reception. When it was Alex's turn to give his toast, he started by congratulating us, but then immediately pivoted into a long rant about how my sister always tries to control everything, even her own wedding, and then went on to recount every small, embarrassing story from my childhood. My first crush, a bad haircut I got in middle school, the time I peed my pants at a friend's sleepover. It got worse. He wrapped up the funny stories by joking that I must have been stress planning a wedding without asking for his advice, implying that I was incompetent and selfish. People were laughing, but not in a supportive way. It was awkward and humiliating. I was literally in shock and barely held it together. Sam and I left the reception an hour later because I couldn't handle being around him. Afterward, Alex acted like nothing happened. He texted me a few days later asking if I'd seen the viral video of his toast. Someone had filmed it without my knowledge, saying it was hilarious and that everyone loved it. I responded coldly, telling him he crossed a line, and he said I was being too sensitive. Now here's the current problem. Alex is engaged to his fiancée, Jenna, 28F, and the wedding planning is underway. They've asked me to contribute $3,000 to the wedding, saying it's traditional for siblings to chip in for each other. They also said it's for family pride, and that I'm being petty if I refuse. I told them I wouldn't be contributing because of how he treated me at my wedding. Alex completely lost it. He's told our parents I'm being immature and vindictive, and they're pressuring me to pay, arguing that refusing will ruin our family dynamic. I feel strongly that I have every right not to contribute. It's not about money, it's about principle. I don't owe him anything after how he humiliated me publicly. I also told my parents that if Alex wants my support at his wedding, he should apologize sincerely first, not just act like it didn't happen. They think I'm being dramatic, and Alex is now threatening to exclude me from the wedding entirely and call me ungrateful in front of everyone. I am honestly torn. Part of me feels guilty for refusing because I know weddings are expensive and I don't want to start a family feud. But another part of me is furious that my brother thinks he can publicly humiliate me and still demand money from me for his wedding. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to financially contribute to my brother's wedding after he publicly humiliated me in my own. Additional context that might matter. My parents offered to mediate, but I refused because I know they tend to side with him in these situations. I have a tight budget myself and saving for a house. So while $3,000 isn't life-changing, it's significant for me. Alex has a history of pranks or jokes at my expense, but this was by far the worst because it wasn't private and it was on my wedding day. I still talk to my other siblings, I have 2 younger sisters, who are completely on my side. I don't want to attend the wedding if it's going to be awkward, but I also don't want my parents to have a huge fight with me over money. I've thought about offering to help in non-financial ways, like helping with decorations or music, but I honestly don't trust him not to make me look ridiculous again. This has been eating at me for months, and every time I think about paying him or going to his wedding, I feel sick. So, AITA? AITA for refusing to let my sister's wedding ruin my family tradition, even though it caused a huge fight. I, 32F, have a tradition in my family that has been going on for decades. Every year, on the first Saturday of September, my family hosts a big backyard dinner party that usually includes about 30 to 40 people. It's a potluck, everyone contributes, and it's not just immediate family, but also extended family and close friends. My parents started it when I was a kid, and it's become this sacred annual event. Everyone marks their calendars years in advance, and missing it is almost unthinkable. This year, my younger sister, Emily, 29F, announced she was getting married. Her fiancé, Jake, 30M, is great, and I was excited for her, but then I found out they wanted to have their wedding on the first Saturday of September. I told her immediately that this was the same day as our family dinner, and she insisted that it was too important to change. I offered to help her move the date even 1 week later, but she said she didn't want to wait because a lot of their friends were coming from out of town, and it was the only weekend everyone was available. I tried to explain to her that the dinner isn't just some casual get-together, but a decades-long tradition that everyone in our family prioritizes. My parents were especially upset when they found out she didn't want to change it, but they also didn't want to put pressure on her because it was her wedding. I started worrying about how we could handle both events because I knew everyone in our family would be forced to choose between my sister's wedding and the dinner. A few weeks later, Emily sent out the wedding invitations, and sure enough, she made no mention of the conflict with our annual dinner. When I brought it up with her again, she told me she was offended that I would even ask her to change the wedding. She said it was a once-in-a-lifetime event, and our family tradition wasn't as important as her big day. I tried to explain that I didn't want to cancel the wedding, just that she could accommodate our dinner by moving it to a Friday or the following Saturday. She refused. I went to my parents and tried to come up with a compromise. I suggested maybe we could start the dinner earlier in the day and leave before the wedding started. But my parents pointed out that's impractical because some family members travel far for our dinner and expect to stay the whole evening. We considered skipping the dinner entirely this year, but I felt really strongly that letting it go completely would break the tradition permanently. Eventually, I decided to stick to our annual dinner, knowing that some family members would feel torn. I sent out reminders as usual, invited everyone, and made it clear that we would be proceeding despite my sister's wedding. The morning of the dinner, the tension was palpable. A few family members texted me saying they didn't want to upset Emily and were skipping the dinner to go to the wedding. My parents were visibly upset with the whole situation, but they didn't stop me. During the dinner, the atmosphere was a mix of nostalgia and stress. People were laughing, but you could tell they were divided. Some were complaining that the timing was awful, and a few expressed frustration that I hadn't asked Emily to reconsider one more time. After the dinner, Emily confronted me in a very heated conversation. She accused me of being selfish and ruining her wedding experience for our family. She said I put a stupid backyard dinner over the most important day of her life, and that I had forced our relatives into choosing between us. I told her I was honoring a family tradition that literally defines our family calendar and culture. She called me cruel and selfish, said I was prioritizing nostalgia over her happiness, and left angrily. Since then, our relationship has been tense. Some relatives have taken sides. My parents are upset that Emily was so angry, but they also say I could have been more flexible. Aunts and uncles are divided. Some agree that our family dinner is sacred and that I did nothing wrong, while others think I overreacted and ruined my sister's big day by refusing to compromise. I understand her point of view. Weddings are huge events, but I also feel that traditions like our dinner are what keep families connected across generations. I've been second-guessing myself because the fallout has been worse than I expected. Emily hasn't spoken to me directly since the confrontation, and some relatives have started sending subtle messages about taking her side. Part of me wonders if I should have just let the dinner go this year. But another part of me feels that bending to her wedding sets a precedent that could slowly erode this tradition. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's wedding interfere with our decades-long family dinner tradition, even though it caused a major fight and forced some relatives to choose sides. Character count, 6,283 if you want, I can also draft a second, even longer version closer to 7,000 characters with more layers of tension and family drama to make it feel like a viral Reddit post. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to lend my sister a large sum of money for her wedding after she lied about her financial situation. I, 28F, have always been the responsible one in my family when it comes to money. I have a stable job in tech, I live within my means, and I've been able to save a decent amount over the years. My sister, Megan, 26F, on the other hand, has always had a more carefree attitude toward money. She works in a creative field with inconsistent income and often spends impulsively on things she wants in the moment. That's not my problem normally, but recently it's become a huge issue. About 3 months ago, Megan got engaged to her boyfriend, Ethan, 28M. She was ecstatic and immediately started planning the wedding, which is understandable. However, during one of our early planning conversations, she casually mentioned that she was a little tight on funds and might need some help covering some wedding costs. At first, I offered to help with minor things like decorations or catering suggestions, nothing financial. But the conversation escalated quickly. Within a week, she sent me a detailed spreadsheet of projected wedding expenses, totaling nearly $25,000. Her plan was that I would lend her $15,000 to cover the majority of it, which she promised to pay back within a year. She said she had some savings, but not enough to cover the remainder. I was shocked. That's a lot of money for me, too, and I have my own bills and future plans. I asked her some questions about her savings and how she intended to repay me, and that's when things got weird. She told me she had $3,000 in a savings account and another $2,000 she was expecting from her next freelance project. That's only $5,000, which still left her $20,000 short. I expressed concern, but she assured me it was manageable and that I was her last resort because she didn't want to take loans. Something about this didn't sit right with me, so I decided to dig a little deeper. I saw some posts she had made on social media showing her expensive shopping trips, her new designer shoes, and a vacation she took last month. On top of that, she had recently bought a high-end camera for her hobby, which wasn't cheap. I confronted her about it gently, asking how she could spend on these things while claiming she couldn't cover wedding costs. She got defensive, insisting she deserved a little fun before the wedding stress, and that it was different because those were personal treats. Still uneasy, I asked her to be transparent about all her finances if she wanted a loan of $15,000 from me. After some back and forth, she admitted that she had lied about her savings and actually had around $10,000 accessible, not including a loan from a friend she had already taken. I felt blindsided. She hadn't just overstated her need. She had misrepresented her financial situation entirely. At this point, I told her I couldn't lend her that kind of money. I explained that I was uncomfortable lending such a large sum, especially given that she had been dishonest about her finances and had already taken loans from others. She immediately went into what I would call emotional manipulation mode, saying I was being selfish and that family should help each other. She said this wedding was her once-in-a-lifetime event and that I was ruining her dream. I tried to reason with her calmly, suggesting alternatives like reducing the wedding budget, delaying the wedding, or taking a formal loan that she could pay back without burdening me. She refused every suggestion, saying none of it was acceptable and accusing me of not supporting her. Eventually, our conversation ended with her storming off and sending me a string of angry texts, calling me a bad sister and saying she can't believe I'd let money come between us. Since then, she's been spreading her side of the story to my parents, cousins, and friends, framing me as the villain who refused to help her in her time of need. My parents have been supportive but slightly disappointed, saying I could have found a way to help, which adds another layer of stress. A few friends think I'm in the right for setting boundaries, but I feel guilty because I love my sister and don't want to be seen as cruel. Honestly, I still feel conflicted. On one hand, I think lending $15,000 to someone who's been dishonest and has a history of reckless spending is not a good idea. On the other hand, she's family, and weddings are expensive and emotional events, so I understand why she's upset. I also worry that this disagreement might permanently damage our relationship. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to lend my sister a large sum of money after discovering she lied about her financial situation. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.